Let's talk about how to use contacts. First, we'll talk about how to use individual contact records, and then we'll get into how to organize your contacts to make sure you're focusing your efforts on the right people. Here are 4 things you can do to make sure you're getting the most out of your contact records. First, use contact records for individual people and company records for organizations. In HubSpot CRM, contacts and companies are distinct from one another. If you're in B2B sales, you can use company records to keep track of the businesses you're working with. But remember, your goal should be to interact with people. So you should still create individual contact records for the people at those businesses. Second, associate contact and company records with each other. When a contact record is associated to a company record, the two are linked together inside the CRM, and information will flow between them. You can associate multiple contacts to a single company, and then your interactions with all of those people will be combined together on the company records timeline. In many cases, the CRM will associate contacts and companies automatically. In fact, the CRM will often create the company record for you and automatically associate it to the appropriate contacts. Anytime you add an email address to the contact record, the CRM will take the domain from that email address and use it to search for company information in a database of public records. Any information it finds will be used to create a company record, and that company will be automatically associated with all of your contacts who have emails at that domain. If you add a contact without an email address, or if they have a free mail address such as Gmail or Outlook.com, the CRM won't be able to create and associate the company record automatically. But if you're in B2B sales, you should still create and associate the company record so you can add contacts to it as you meet more people at that company. Third, use notes and tasks for internal communication. The emails and calls you have with your contacts will get recorded automatically, but the contact record should also record the conversations that happen behind the scenes. There are a couple tools that will help you with this: notes and tasks. Notes and tasks both give you a way to add information to the timeline without notifying the contact. Notes are good for capturing miscellaneous information. If you need a place to jot down some ideas for an upcoming call, for example, you could save that as a note and it would be added to the timeline. Tasks are simple reminders. So if you want to remember to follow up with one of your contacts who is going out of town for a couple of weeks, you could create a task for the day they get back, and you'd get a reminder email to follow up with them on that day. Tasks and notes are great ways to collaborate with other people on your team. Anytime you need to have a conversation about a contact, notes are the place to do it. You can @mention teammates to bring them into the conversation, and then your notes back and forth will be recorded on the timeline for future reference. You can also assign tasks to your teammates if there's something you need them to do on a certain date. This way, all communication, both internal and external, will show up together on the contact's timeline, giving you a full account of what's happening with them. One final thing you should be aware of with tasks and notes: if you create them on a contact record, they'll only appear on that contact record. If you create them on a company record, they'll only appear on that company record. Tasks and notes should be specific to the record you add them to, because they won't flow through to the timelines of any associated records. Finally, add a contact to HubSpot CRM for every person you talk to. Even if you're just getting in touch with a company and you've only spoken with a receptionist, you should still add them as a contact. And if you call back later and get a different receptionist, you should create a record for them too. This way, the company record will give you a full account of everyone you've talked to and what they've said. You never know when you might have to circle back with someone to get more information. Now, you might be thinking, if I make a record for everybody, how do I know which contacts to focus on? Let's talk about that. In the CRM, you can create custom views of contacts so that you only see the people who meet certain qualifications. You can do this for companies as well, but for now, let's keep focusing on contacts. Every contact record has a bunch of fields called contact properties. Contact properties hold basic information such as name, phone number, and address. They also hold important internal information such as who a contact is assigned to and when they were last contacted. When you create a custom view, you'll filter your contacts based on the information stored in their contact properties. Here are 4 pro tips for making custom views. First, filter by HubSpot owner to see only the records you own. There's a property that appears on both contact and company records called HubSpot owner. This tells you which rep a record is assigned to. Depending on how your CRM is set up, you might only be able to see the records you own, but you might also be able to see some records you don't own. So when you're looking for a list of contacts to work with, there are two things you can do with a HubSpot owner filter. The thing you'll do most often is set it to Me so that you only see the records you already own. The other thing you can do is set it to Is Unknown, so you can look for contacts in your territory that you haven't claimed yet. Next, filter by job title to find the right people. While it's great to keep track of everyone you meet at a company, when it comes to moving a sale forward, you need to make sure you're talking with the decision maker. Looking at job titles can often help with that. Think about the people who have recently bought from you. Is there a pattern in their job titles? If you aren't sure, dig back through your emails and check out their signatures. If you see a particular title coming up over and over again, create a filter for it and include it in your custom views. By the way, job title probably isn't the only thing your buyers have in common. Take a look at your best customers and see if there are other patterns you can find. Do they work in a particular industry or for a particular size of company? Do they live in a specific part of the world? Do they all tend to be within a certain age range or stage of life? Put all that information together and you'll get a description for what your typical buyer looks like. We call this a buyer persona. Buyer personas are really handy during the early stages of the sales process. As you find new contacts, you can compare them to your buyer persona to help you determine how good of a fit they are for your offering. But once you get further in the sales process, you'll want to rely less on your buyer persona and more on the details individual contacts provide about themselves. We'll get into buyer personas more in the class on email templates. For now, it's enough just knowing what job titles your buyers tend to have. But if there are other patterns you notice, you might want to see if you can include those as filters in your custom views as well. Next, filter by lead status for context. Lead status is a property that you can use to keep track of how a person is progressing. The default values for this property include such options as new, in progress, and unqualified. But your team admin can customize these options to be more relevant to your process. Some teams like to add an option such as hot or starred, so they can prioritize the contacts who are most eager to make a move. If you make a habit of updating the lead status of your contacts as you work with them, you'll have a lot more flexibility in the views you can create. You could have one view for the hot leads that should be your top priorities, and another view for slow but promising leads that need a bit more encouragement. Finally, design views around action. This is the most important tip of them all. Really, you can organize your views however you want, but if you don't have a specific action in mind, they won't do you a lot of good. Instead, create views that focus on specific actions like following up or finding a new point of contact. Wondering how to do that? Stick around. The next video will give you an example of using contacts in custom views.